My mother was adjusting Emily's veil when Michael and I arrived at the chapel. Her hands moved with care, smoothing lace like it was sacred. I hadn't seen that look on her face in years, focused, glowing almost tender. Certainly not on my wedding day. That thought came before I could stop it, so I swallowed it like I always did. Emily, my younger sister, was getting married. 29, a preschool teacher, everyone's sunshine, the golden girl. And today, the sun was shining just for her. Michael. My husband leaned toward me as we found our seats. He gave my hand a quiet squeeze. $10,000 in my inside pocket, he said, tapping his suit jacket. You sure about this? I nodded. It's her wedding. He didn't say more. We'd already paid for 1/3 of the reception, but I didn't want to discuss money today. I told myself this wasn't the time. That became my mantra. As I sat down, I scanned the rows ahead. My father, George, was laughing with one of Emily's in-laws, looking younger than I remembered, shirt tucked, crisp tie straight back upright. He used to slouch. Linda, my mother, sat next to him, turning every so often to check on the altar as if she couldn't believe today was really happening. She caught my eye once, offered a polite smile. I smiled back. Then she turned away. Nothing cold, just distant, like I was someone else's cousin, not her eldest daughter. The music began. Emily walked in on George's arm, and Linda's eyes welled instantly. Michael leaned a little toward me again, just enough that his shoulder pressed against mine. I don't think he meant anything by it. Maybe he just knew. The ceremony was short, sweet, traditional. Emily cried at the vows. Ethan, her new husband, choked a little too. They looked happy, radiant even. As they kissed, the guests clapped and stood, some already pulling out phones. I clapped too. My palms felt stiff. I hadn't expected to feel so out of place. But watching my parents glow, shine, and beam as if nothing else in the world mattered. But this moment, it hit harder than I'd thought. I told myself I was being sensitive, that I was overthinking. Still, I couldn't help but wonder, did they ever look like that at me? The reception was held in a renovated warehouse. Strings of white lights, mismatched wooden chairs, lilac tied to every napkin. It was tasteful, expensive, and well-organized. I knew because I helped organize it. Not that anyone mentioned that out loud. Dinner passed in a blur of polite conversation. Michael chatted with Ethan's uncle about real estate. I picked at my salmon. My parents were seated at the long head table beside Emily and Ethan, beaming like royalty. I stayed 2 rows down with Michael smiling when someone looked our way, nodding when Emily glanced over. Then came the toasts. The best man, one of Ethan's college friends, kept it short and full of inside jokes. Emily's maid of honor, her childhood best friend, cried halfway through hers. Then my mother rose, holding a champagne flute with both hands. My father stood beside her, clearing his throat. Thank you all. My mother began tapping her glass once. We're so grateful to see so many of you here to celebrate our beloved daughter's wedding. Beloved, it hit like a pin under my rib. She's always brought joy into our lives, George added. Always been full of light. Michael's hand slipped over mine again. I smiled tightly and nodded the same way I had smiled through my own wedding dinner when Mom had stood up and merely said, "We're glad Rachel found someone," but now they were practically glowing. My mother reached into her purse and pulled out a small stack of papers. Ethan and Emily. She corrected herself with a laugh. Your father and I wanted to give you something meaningful, something to begin your life together. She held the papers up. We're giving you the family home. The words dropped like a stone in a silent room. Then applause, cheers, clinking glasses. People stood to clap. Emily covered her mouth with one hand, eyes watering. Ethan looked stunned. I felt nothing at first, not even shock. I just stared. Michael went rigid beside me. The house. That house. The same house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 5 years. The same house Mom and Dad had begged me to help save when Dad's hours were cut at the factory, and Mom's arthritis made full-time work impossible. We never made it a formal agreement. No contracts, no paperwork, just sweetheart, we're falling behind. We'd pay you back if we could. And I said yes, quietly. Every month for 5 years. They hadn't mentioned this plan not once. No heads up, no discussion. My mouth stayed closed. My smile didn't move. Emily cried, hugged our parents. Ethan kissed her on the cheek. People around us were whispering, "How generous, so beautiful, such a blessing." Michael leaned in. "Did you know?" I shook my head, lips tight. When Emily walked past our table later, she squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Can you believe it?" Her eyes shone like someone who'd just won the lottery. But there was something behind it. Something too calm. She had known. Michael and I left an hour later. Early enough not to raise alarms. Michael has an early meeting, I told a few people. So happy for them. Just tired. In the car, I didn't say a word until we were on the interstate. Then the tears came fast and hot. I gripped my dress like I might tear it open. "I don't care about the house," I said, voice cracking. "It's the not asking. It's pretending like I was never part of it." Michael didn't answer right away. His hand stayed steady on the wheel. "You were more than part of it. You carried it. They just didn't want to remember that." We drove the rest of the way home in silence. Not the sharp kind, just tired. The kind where words feel too small for what you're holding back. I washed my face and changed into pajamas before I said anything else. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, untying his shoes. He looked at me like he was waiting gently, like he always did. "They didn't even hesitate," I said finally. "Just stood up there and gave it away like I was a footnote." He didn't interrupt. He knew better than to rush this kind of grief. I sat beside him, the fabric of my robe soft between my fingers. "It's not just the house," I whispered. "It's that they didn't even think it might hurt me." Michael placed his hand over mine, warm and steady. And that's when the rest of it started tumbling out. I told him about my graduation, how Mom handed me a card with $50 and said, "Spend it wisely." How 2 years later, Emily got a silver Ford with a big red bow in the driveway. She's just starting out. They said like I hadn't been. I told him about my 21st birthday, how Mom and Dad said they couldn't come to dinner because Emily had a soccer game. Not a championship, just a game. And they'd already promised her. I remembered things I hadn't let myself remember. The way Dad always answered Emily's calls on the first ring, but let mine go to voicemail. The time Mom skipped my promotion dinner to babysit for Emily's cat. Michael listened silent, but with that wrinkle between his eyes that only showed up when something really hurt him on my behalf. I didn't care at the time, I said. I told myself they were just busy, that I was being dramatic. But now I look down at my lap. Now it feels like I was invisible, just the person they counted on when they needed money, not someone they loved. Michael shifted closer. "You weren't invisible to me." I leaned my head against his shoulder. He smelled like clean linen and cologne like home. I just kept thinking, I said, if I worked harder, helped more, they'd see me. Really see me. He didn't say what I already knew. They saw exactly what they wanted. And what they wanted was someone who didn't ask for anything in return. 3 weeks passed. I kept my head down at work, answered only the calls I had to, and left my phone face down every evening. No one mentioned the wedding. No one mentioned the house. The silence was both mercy and punishment. Then one evening, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen since that night. Mom Linda. I stared at it for 2 rings, 3, then picked up. Her voice came through bright like nothing had happened. "Rachel, honey, we're having a little family dinner this weekend. Emily and Ethan are back from their honeymoon. We'd love to see you and Michael. Just something casual." I wanted to say no. I wanted to hang up, but a quiet, irrational part of me, the part that still hoped for fairness, thought maybe they'd say, sorry, or at least explain. So I said, "Sure, we'll come." Saturday came fast. Michael drove. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, staring out the window. The closer we got, the more it felt like approaching someone else's home, not the one I'd been paying for. Emily's SUV sat in the driveway. My parents' old sedan was beside it. I hesitated at the front door before ringing the bell. I no longer had a key. Linda opened the door, cheeks flushed like she'd been laughing. "Rachel, Michael, come in, come in." She hugged me like nothing was wrong. I let her stiffly. Inside, George was watching a game with Ethan. He gave Michael a firm handshake and offered me a distracted hug. "Glad you made it," he said, eyes already turning back to the screen. I scanned the room. "Where's Emily changing curtains in the dining room?" Mom said cheerfully. "She's been redecorating all week." I followed the sound of fabric and soft clinks. There she was, standing on a small ladder, replacing Mom's old green curtains with white ones. She glanced down, smiled, and said nothing. Dinner was Mom's meatloaf, the one she used to make when company came over. The table was crowded, and I was seated between Michael and George. Across from me, Linda and Emily. Ethan took the end. Emily and Ethan spent the first 10 minutes detailing their honeymoon in Florida. Every meal, every towel animal, every kayak trip. I nodded when it seemed right. Michael asked just enough questions to keep things moving. Then Linda cleared her throat, so she began tone soft. "We wanted to talk to you about something, Rachel." Here it was. As you know, she said, "We've given the house to Emily and Ethan. They're starting their life. They need space." I nodded slowly, letting her continue. George shifted in his seat. "What your mother's trying to say is we can't stay here anymore." I put down my fork. "We've decided..." Linda said that we'd like to move into your mountain cabin. "It's perfect for us. Quiet, peaceful, just the right size." I didn't speak right away. I let the silence stretch until everyone felt it. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You gave the house I was paying for to Emily, and now you want to move into my property without asking." George coughed. "Be reasonable, Rachel. Where else are we supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I said. Emily's voice piped in. "It's not like you use it that much." I turned to her. "It's mine. I bought it. I decide who's in it." Linda's face paled. "You're not saying no, are you?" "I am," I said calmly. "No, you're not moving into my cabin." 2 weeks passed without a word. I blocked their numbers, not forever, just until I could think without shaking. The cabin stayed untouched, quiet, and safe in my mind, like a door I had finally locked. Then on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was reviewing ad copy at my desk, my phone buzzed. Security alert, front door, opened, Pine Hill cabin. My stomach dropped. I opened the app. Someone had used a key but hadn't disabled the alarm. 30 seconds later, the security company called. "Miss Carter, this is Safeguard Security. We've detected entry at your property on Pine Hill Road." "Was that you?" "No," I said. "Send the police." An hour later, my phone rang again, a calm male voice. "Miss Carter, this is Officer Reed with the County Sheriff's Department. We're at your Pine Hill property with 2 individuals who identify as your parents. They have keys but admit they don't have your permission to be here." I closed my eyes. Of course it was them. "Yes," I said. "They are my parents, but they do not have permission to be in my home." "I understand. Because they used a key and not force, it's a gray area. We can remove them, but pressing charges would be up to you." "I'll come up," I said. "We're about an hour away." Michael drove. Neither of us said much. I was too angry to speak, too tired to yell. Somewhere in the middle of that silence, I realized I wasn't surprised. Hurt, yes, but not surprised. The cabin appeared as we rounded the bend, pine trees, gravel crunching under the tires, and in front, a police cruiser, 2 officers, and on the porch, George and Linda sitting stiffly among a few suitcases and plastic bins. George stood when he saw me. "Rachel, thank God. Tell them it's a misunderstanding." I walked past him and up to the officers. "Thank you for coming. Yes, these are my parents, but they do not have permission to be here." One officer nodded. "Do you want to press charges?" Linda stood now. "Rachel, you wouldn't?" "You broke into my house after I told you no," I said. "What did you think would happen?" George's voice rose. We didn't break in. We used the key you gave us. Linda's voice cracked open. This is all your fault. If you just let us stay, none of this would have happened. I stared at her. My fault. You gave away a house I was paying for and then tried to take over my other property without even asking. And now you're sitting here acting like I'm the one who betrayed you. You're so arrogant. She spat. So selfish. We raised you better than this. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. You didn't raise me to be a doormat. That shut her up. I turned to the officers. Can I speak to you privately? They stepped away with me. I took a breath. I don't want to press charges, but I don't want them here either. We can bring them in for a few hours, one officer offered. Let them cool off. Sometimes a holding cell puts things in perspective. I nodded. That sounds about right. Back on the porch, I said simply, they're taking you in for a few hours. I'm not pressing charges, but you cannot be here. Linda looked stunned. George said nothing. As the cruiser pulled away, Michael slipped his hand in mine. We waited for the locksmith. While he worked, I arranged for their things to be moved to a nearby storage unit. I paid for 1 month. I sent the information to Emily. I didn't unblock anyone. By the time the new locks clicked into place, the house felt clean again. Mine again. 2 days later, I opened Facebook and saw my mother's face smiling back at me from a post I hadn't expected and would never forget. Today, I learned what it means to be abandoned by your own child. The caption went on for 6 paragraphs. How she and George in their golden years were cast out like unwanted pets. How I, their eldest daughter, had called the police and had them removed like criminals, leaving them with nowhere to go, no roof, no compassion. The post was public. There were already dozens of comments. Some from old neighbors, some from family, some from people I hadn't seen since childhood. I can't believe she'd do that to you. So many kids these days have no sense of duty. That girl always was cold, even in church. I sat there staring at my screen, letting the bile rise slowly, steadily, until Michael leaned over and read it with me. Are you going to respond? He asked gently. I didn't answer right away. I just opened a blank status and started typing. Since my mother has chosen to make our private conflict public, I feel I need to share a few facts. I wrote carefully, not with anger, but clarity. I listed how I had paid the mortgage on their home for 5 years. How they gave that home to Emily and Ethan without ever mentioning it to me. How they'd planned again without asking to move into my mountain cabin. And when I said no, how they used a spare key, entered my property without permission, and triggered a police response. I ended simply, family is about mutual respect, not entitlement, not rewriting history. Then I hit post. The response came fast. Messages, comments, private DMs from cousins. We had no idea. From my aunt in Texas, I wish you'd said something sooner. Your mom's version didn't sit right. Even from George's old coworker, you paid the mortgage. Then she gave the house away. Jesus, the shame didn't lift, but the weight shifted. I wasn't vindictive, but I was done being silent. 3 days later, my cousin Sarah called. I just thought you should know, she said, her voice low. Your parents tried to go back to the house. I didn't speak. I waited. Emily wouldn't let them in. She continued. She told them it's her house now, that there's no room for them. I let the words settle, not out of disbelief, just confirmation. Sarah sighed. They're staying in some apartment off Route 66. Real small month-to-month lease. Your mom took a part-time job at the drugstore. She says it's temporary. I thanked her and hung up. Michael looked up from the sink when I came into the kitchen. What is it? They went to Emily's, I said. She turned them away. He raised his eyebrows. After all that, I nodded. They're in a rented apartment now. Mom's working again. I expected to feel satisfaction. I didn't. I felt tired. That night, I stared at my phone for a long time. One new voicemail, my mother's voice, softer than I remembered. We made a mistake, a big one. Please call us. We need to talk. I deleted it. Maybe one day I'd want to hear her say the words, but not now. Not when everything still felt so sharp. Instead, I listed the mountain cabin for rent. I didn't need it empty and echoing anymore. It could pay for itself. Someone else could drink coffee on the porch. Michael asked as we got into bed. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? I thought about it. Maybe. Not for them. For me, he nodded, turned off the light. I lay in the dark and breathed. I wasn't trying to be the favorite anymore. I wasn't even trying to be understood. The next morning, another call came. I let it ring. No voicemail this time. Maybe she didn't know what else to say. Maybe that silence was her way of finally listening. I watched at the screen until it went dark. Outside, the sky was overcast, a soft gray that promised rain, but not drama, just a slow, quiet washing. I poured my coffee, sat by the window, and didn't answer. If Emily was the daughter they chose, then they can live with that choice. Rachel learns the painful but liberating lesson that family respect must be mutual, not one-sided. For years, she silently supported her parents, paying their mortgage only to see them give the house to her sister without acknowledgement. Their entitlement extended to her cabin, revealing their disregard for her boundaries. By standing firm, confronting their betrayal publicly, and reclaiming her space, Rachel realizes her worth isn't tied to their approval. She stops seeking validation from those who overlook her contributions, choosing self-respect over familial duty. This shift allows her to release their expectations and prioritize her own peace.
The invitation came via text on a Tuesday afternoon. Family dinner Friday. Mom's making your favorite. Be there at 6. My brother Tyler had sent it to the group chat, and within minutes, everyone had responded with variations of "see you there" and heart emojis. I was the last to reply 3 hours later with a simple "okay." No one acknowledged my response. That was normal. In my family, I existed somewhere between an afterthought and a mild embarrassment. Present but not particularly valued, tolerated but not celebrated. I sat in my office on the 42nd floor of a downtown Seattle high-rise, looking out at the city skyline as the late October sun painted everything in shades of amber. My monitor displayed real-time analytics. 94 million active users across 127 countries. Revenue projections for Q4 showing $287 million. Server capacity at 73%, well within optimal range. My company, NextGen Analytics, had revolutionized how businesses understood customer behavior through AI-powered predictive modeling. We'd gone from a scrappy 3-person startup in my apartment to a company valued at $4.2 billion in just under 7 years. But to my family, I was still just playing business on the internet. Growing up in Bellevue, I'd always been the odd one out. Tyler was the star, varsity football, student body president, full scholarship to USC, MBA from Wharton, now a managing director at Goldman Sachs. My sister Rachel had followed a similarly golden path. Debate team captain, Yale undergraduate, Harvard Law, partner at a prestigious Seattle firm by 34. I'd been the weird kid who preferred coding to sports, who spent lunch periods teaching myself Python instead of socializing, who got excited about algorithms and data structures while everyone else was excited about homecoming. You need to develop social skills, Mom used to say, not unkindly. Computer stuff is fine as a hobby, but you need to focus on real career prospects. She's right, Dad would add. Technology is a tool, not a career. You need something solid. Accounting maybe. Engineering if you're committed to the computer angle. But I hadn't wanted to be an engineer at someone else's company. I'd wanted to build something of my own. At 19, I dropped out of community college to launch my first startup. A simple analytics dashboard for small e-commerce businesses. It failed within a year. My family's collective, "I told you so," was deafening. At 21, I tried again with a different approach. That company lasted 18 months before running out of funding. Maybe it's time to accept that entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, Tyler had said over Christmas dinner that year, his arm around his fiancée, his success radiating from every pore. There's no shame in getting a normal job, Jenna. Most people aren't cut out to be founders. I'm not most people, I'd said quietly. Clearly, Rachel had added with a laugh. Most people know when to quit. But I hadn't quit. I'd started NextGen Analytics at 23 with my last $8,000 and a vision for AI-powered customer insights that nobody else seemed to understand. Now I was 30, my company had 412 employees, and we were in final negotiations for a Series D funding round that would value us at $4.2 billion. Tomorrow, Bloomberg was publishing an exclusive feature. The woman who made AI accessible. How Jenna Morrison built a $4 billion empire from her living room. I'd known about the article for 2 months. The Bloomberg reporter had spent weeks fact-checking every detail, interviewing my clients, my investors, my team. They'd verified our financials, our user numbers, our technology patents. They'd even spoken with my first investor, who'd given me $50,000 when everyone else said I was crazy. The article was comprehensive and glowing. And I hadn't told my family any of it. Not because I was waiting for a dramatic reveal, but because I'd learned years ago that telling them about my success only invited skepticism and dismissal. They needed external authority to believe anything I said. So I'd stayed quiet. Let them think what they wanted. Built my empire in silence. Friday evening arrived cold and rainy, typical Pacific Northwest autumn weather. I drove to my parents' house in Bellevue, the same sprawling contemporary home where I'd grown up, in my 6-year-old Subaru. Practical, reliable, invisible. The same car I'd been driving since my second startup failed. I could afford a Tesla, a Porsche, anything I wanted. But changing my lifestyle would only invite questions I didn't want to answer. Tyler's BMW was already in the driveway, parked next to Rachel's Audi. My Subaru looked appropriately pathetic beside them. Mom answered the door, her face lighting up with genuine warmth. She loved me, I never doubted that. She just didn't understand me. Jenna. Come in, you look frozen. Are you eating enough? I'm fine, Mom. You work too hard on that computer thing. You need to take care of yourself. I followed her inside, where Dad sat in his usual spot watching the news on their massive TV. Tyler and Rachel were in the kitchen with Rachel's husband Mark, their conversation loud and animated. The startup founder has arrived. Tyler called out when he saw me, his voice dripping with affectionate condescension. How's the internet business, Jenna? Make your first million yet? Rachel laughed, pouring wine. Tyler, be nice. Jenna's very serious about her little tech project. I'm not mocking, Tyler protested, though his grin said otherwise. I think it's great that she has hobbies. Keeps her busy. It's not a hobby, I said quietly, setting my bag down. It's my company. Right. Your company. He made air quotes. How many employees did you say you have now? 3. 4. More than that. 10. That's impressive for a side hustle. I didn't correct him. There was no point. Mom called us to dinner and we settled around the familiar table. The food was excellent as always. Roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables. Mom had made her famous apple pie for dessert. So, Jenna, Dad said, cutting his chicken with precision. Your mother mentioned you're still working on that analytics thing. Yes. That's been 5 years now? 7. 7 years. He exchanged a glance with Mom. And you're still able to support yourself? I'm doing fine. Fine, Tyler repeated. That's always your answer. But fine doesn't mean successful, does it? Fine means scraping by. Tyler, Mom said gently. I'm just being honest, Mom. We're family. We should be able to have honest conversations. He turned to me. Jenna, I'm not trying to attack you. I'm genuinely curious. How does your business model work? How do you make money from this internet analytics thing? We provide AI-powered customer behavior prediction tools for e-commerce and SaaS companies. They pay subscription fees based on usage tiers. Rachel leaned forward. And how many companies actually pay for this? Currently, we have enterprise contracts with several hundred clients. Several hundred, Tyler repeated skeptically. That seems like a lot. What kind of companies? Various industries. Retail, technology, healthcare, finance. Can you name any? I took a sip of water. I'm not at liberty to discuss specific clients. NDAs. Tyler and Rachel exchanged knowing looks, the kind that said, see? She's making it up. That's convenient, Rachel said. NDAs preventing you from providing any proof. I'm not trying to prove anything. No, you're just expecting us to believe that you, working alone from your apartment, have hundreds of corporate clients paying for your services. I don't work alone. I have a team. How big a team? Dad asked. I hesitated for just a moment, long enough for them to notice. She doesn't want to say because it's embarrassingly small, Tyler said with a laugh. Jenna, come on. Just be honest with us. You got what, maybe 2 or 3 other people? Probably interns or contractors you found on Upwork. Something like that, I said because arguing was pointless. Mark, Rachel's husband, spoke up for the first time. You know, I actually looked at your website once. It looked pretty professional. What did that cost to build? I built it myself. See, that's what concerns me, Dad interjected. You're doing everything yourself. CEO, developer, salesperson, marketing. That's not a company, Jenna. That's a freelance operation. Nothing wrong with freelancing, Mom added quickly. It's just not the same as running a real business. A real business has scale, Tyler explained, his Goldman Sachs training evident in every word. It has infrastructure, capital, growth trajectory. What you have is a lifestyle business at best. It is fine. Not everyone needs to build the next Google. But you should be realistic about what you're doing. I am realistic. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're 30 years old, still living in a small apartment, still driving a car from college, still working on the same project you started in your early 20s. That's not trajectory, Jenna. That's stagnation. Rachel nodded. Tyler's right. And we're worried about you. We're not saying this to be mean. We're saying it because we love you and we want you to have security. I have security. Do you have retirement savings? Dad asked. Health insurance? Emergency funds? Yes to all 3. How much in retirement? Tyler pressed. Enough. Enough isn't a number. See, this is what I'm talking about. You're evasive about concrete details because concrete details would reveal that you're not as successful as you want us to believe. I set down my fork carefully, my hands steady. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. No, you're just sitting there being defensive while we're trying to help you. Rachel's voice had that lawyer edge now. Look, I have a friend at Amazon who's hiring for product managers. The pay is $180,000 base plus stock options. I could get you an interview. I appreciate that, but I'm not interested. Why not? Pride. Because I have a company to run. Your internet business, Tyler said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that. Jenna, do you know what I made last year? $1.2 million. Rachel probably made $800,000. That's what real success looks like. That's what happens when you work for established companies with actual revenue. I'm happy for both of you. We're not trying to brag, Rachel said. We're trying to show you what's possible when you make practical choices. Dad stood up to adjust the TV volume. The evening news was starting, though none of us had been paying attention to it. But as he reached for the remote, the anchor's words cut through our conversation. Breaking news tonight from the technology sector. Seattle-based NextGen Analytics has just announced a Series D funding round valuing the artificial intelligence company at $4.2 billion, making it one of the fastest-growing tech startups in Pacific Northwest history. The room went completely silent. On the screen, a professional photo of me appeared, the one Bloomberg had taken for their article. I was wearing a navy blazer, looking directly at the camera with quiet confidence. The company's founder and CEO, 30-year-old Jenna Morrison, has transformed how businesses understand customer behavior, the anchor continued. In just 7 years, she's grown NextGen Analytics from a living room startup to a company serving over 900 enterprise clients across 127 countries. Tyler's fork clattered onto his plate. Rachel had gone completely white. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad stood frozen, remote in hand, staring at the TV. Morrison's innovative AI-powered predictive modeling has attracted major investments from firms including Sequoia Capital, Andreessen Horowitz and Greylock Partners, the anchor said. The Series D round was led by SoftBank Vision Fund, with additional participation from existing investors. The company employs over 400 people and reported revenue of $780 million in the last fiscal year. The screen cut to footage of our office building, the 42-story high-rise downtown Seattle, my name listed as CEO on the directory. Bloomberg Television will air an exclusive interview with Morrison tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, where she'll discuss her company's revolutionary technology and her plans for international expansion. Then the segment ended, cutting to a commercial for luxury cars. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds. Finally, Tyler found his voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. That can't be you. It is, I said calmly. But you said, Rachel couldn't finish the sentence. I said I have a company. You assumed it was small. Dad slowly lowered himself back into his chair, his face ashen. $4 billion. $4.2 billion valuation, I corrected. Based on the Series D funding. Actual company worth depends on various factors. Mom was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Jenna, how long have you known about this? About the funding announcement. We closed the deal 6 weeks ago. The announcement was scheduled for today. 6 weeks, Tyler repeated. You've known for 6 weeks that you were building a billion-dollar company and you didn't tell us? Would you have believed me if I had? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Rachel grabbed her phone with shaking hands, typing frantically. Oh my God. Oh my God. Jenna, you're all over the news. Bloomberg, TechCrunch, Wall Street Journal, Reuters. There are dozens of articles. They're all calling you. She looked up, her face a mixture of shock and something else. They're calling you the most influential AI entrepreneur of the decade. That's hyperbolic, I said. You have over 400 employees, Dad said, his voice hollow. You said you had a team. We thought you meant 3 people. You assumed 3 people. I never specified. Tyler was scrolling through his phone now, his face growing redder by the second. This says your revenue was $780 million last year. This says you have clients including Amazon, Microsoft, Walmart, Target. This says... He looked up at me, his eyes wild. This says you're personally worth $1.8 billion. Net worth estimates are speculative and based on equity valuations. The actual number is private. But it's in that range? Approximately. Mark had pulled up a video on his phone. There's a CNBC interview with one of your investors from 3 months ago. He's talking about you like you're the next Steve Jobs. Rachel was crying now, though I wasn't sure if it was shock or shame or some combination. How did we not know? How did we not see this? You weren't looking, I said simply. But you're our sister. How could we miss that you were building a billion-dollar company? Because you'd already decided what my story was. Computer-obsessed girl playing entrepreneur, probably failing, definitely not as successful as her siblings. Once you decided that, you stopped paying attention to anything that contradicted it. Tyler stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. I need to call my office. Jesus Christ, Jenna, everyone's going to be asking me about you. My partners, my clients, everyone. And I didn't even know. He turned back to me. Why didn't you tell us? I tried. Multiple times over the years. You dismissed it every time. We didn't dismiss it. No. Tyler, 20 minutes ago you asked if I'd made my first million yet. You called my company a side hustle. You said I was stagnating. He had no response to that. Dad's phone started ringing. Then Mom's. Then Rachel's and Tyler's. Don't answer those, I said quietly. It's going to be reporters and people wanting comments. My communications team can provide you with talking points if you need them. You have a communications team, Mom whispered. I have several teams. Communications, engineering, sales, marketing, customer success, legal, finance, HR. That's what happens when you employ 412 people. 412, Dad repeated mechanically. The news said over 400. You know the exact number. I'm the CEO. I know everything about my company. Rachel's phone buzzed continuously. She looked down at it, her face going from pale to green. I'm getting messages from everyone. The senior partners at my firm. My law school friends. Everyone's asking if I'm related to you. You are. They're asking why I never mentioned it. What are you telling them? She couldn't answer. Mark was still scrolling through articles, his voice numb as he read aloud. Morrison's technology has been called revolutionary by industry analysts. Her AI algorithms can predict customer behavior with 94% accuracy, enabling businesses to optimize everything from inventory management to marketing strategies. Major Fortune 500 companies credit her platform with generating hundreds of millions in additional revenue. Hundreds of millions, Tyler said. You've generated hundreds of millions in revenue for other companies. Our clients see an average ROI of 340% within the first 18 months, I confirmed. Mom finally moved, standing up and walking over to me. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Mom, it's okay. It's not okay, she interrupted, her voice breaking. Nothing about this is okay. We've been treating you like a failure. Like a child playing pretend. And all this time you were, she couldn't finish. I was building something, I said gently. Same thing I've been telling you for 7 years. But we didn't believe you. She reached out to touch my face. We didn't believe our own daughter. Dad's phone rang again. This time he answered, his voice automatic. Hello? Yes, this is Robert Morrison. What? A reporter from Bloomberg? No, I can't. He looked at me, his face crumbling. She's my daughter. I don't have any comment. I need to go. He hung up and sat back down heavily. They want to interview me for the extended profile. About what it was like raising a tech prodigy. You don't have to do any interviews, I said. Did you? Tyler asked suddenly. Did you do an interview with Bloomberg? Yes. It airs tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Jesus. He ran his hand through his hair. Everyone I know is going to watch that. Everyone. Rachel's lawyer instincts kicked in. What are you going to say? About us? About your family? I'm going to talk about my company, my technology, and my vision for the future. I'm not going to discuss my personal life unless they ask directly. And if they ask about your family? About whether we supported you? I looked at her steadily. Then I'll tell the truth. Which is that you loved me but didn't understand what I was building. That you wanted me to be successful but couldn't recognize success when it didn't look like what you expected. Tyler sat back down, his head in his hands. That makes us sound like terrible people. You're not terrible people. You're just people who made assumptions and never questioned them. I'm a managing director at Goldman Sachs, he said, his voice hollow. I analyze companies for a living. I should have seen this. How did I not see this? You saw what you wanted to see. That I was your little sister who needed guidance and protection. That narrative was more comfortable than considering that I might know what I'm doing. Dad stood up again, this time walking to the window where Tyler had been. I told you to study accounting. I said technology was just a tool, not a career. I remember. I was wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. You gave me advice based on your experience. You weren't wrong to do that. You were just limited by your perspective. Don't make excuses for us, Rachel said sharply. We were dismissive and condescending. We treated you like a child playing make-believe. And we were wrong. Mom had started crying harder. You've been coming to these family dinners for years, letting us lecture you and criticize you and offer you entry-level job opportunities, while you were running $1 billion company. $4.2 billion, Tyler corrected automatically, then laughed bitterly. Listen to me. I'm still correcting you. I can't help myself. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, my head of communications probably having a controlled panic attack. The Bloomberg feature wasn't supposed to be public until tomorrow morning. Someone had leaked the funding announcement early. I need to handle this, I said, standing. You're leaving? Mom asked, her voice small. I have a company crisis to manage. The funding announcement leaked 12 hours early. We have protocols for this, but I need to be available. Of course, Dad said quickly. Of course you do. We understand. Do you? I asked quietly. He met my eyes. No. But I want to. I picked up my bag and they all stood, uncertain and uncomfortable. Tyler approached first. Jenna, I need to apologize. What I said earlier about you playing business on the internet, about side hustles and stagnation, I was completely out of line. You said what you believed was true. But I should have asked questions instead of making assumptions. I should have listened to you instead of dismissing you. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Rachel came next. Can we fix this? Can we have a relationship that's not based on us completely misunderstanding your entire life? I don't know, I said honestly. That depends on whether you can see me differently. We see you differently now, she protested. You see my success differently. I'm asking if you can see me differently, the person who's been here all along. She had no answer. Mom hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of you. I should have said that years ago. I'm saying it now. Thank you, Mom. Will you come back? For dinner again, I mean. After things settle down? Maybe. We'll see. Dad walked me to the door. The Bloomberg interview tomorrow. Will you mention us? Only if they ask. And what will you say? I considered the question. That my family loved me but didn't understand me. That I built my success without their support because I didn't have a choice. That sometimes the people closest to you are the last ones to see who you really are. He flinched. That's harsh. It's true. I know. He opened the door for me. For what it's worth, I am proud of you. Even if I failed to show it for 7 years. I know you are, Dad. Now. I walked out into the cold October night, leaving them standing in the doorway, backlit and uncertain. The drive back to my apartment took 25 minutes. 25 minutes where I didn't cry or feel angry or experience any of the emotions I probably should have felt. I just felt tired. My phone rang continuously. I answered the ones that mattered. My COO, my head of communications, my lead investor from Sequoia. The leak actually helped us, my communications director said, her voice excited despite the crisis. The early announcement generated massive buzz. Bloomberg moved up the full-feature release to tonight at midnight. They're calling it the biggest tech story of the quarter. Send me the final copy for approval. Already did. Check your email. I pulled into my parking garage, the same modest apartment building I'd lived in for 5 years, and rode the elevator to the 7th floor. My apartment was small but comfortable. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a living room that doubled as my original office back when the company was just me and my laptop. I could afford a penthouse downtown. A house on the waterfront. Anything I wanted. But this place had history. This was where I'd written the first lines of code that would become next-gen analytics. Where I'd stayed up for 72 hours straight solving the algorithm that would make everything possible. Where I'd cried after my second startup failed and promised myself I'd try one more time. I kept it as a reminder. Of where I started. Of what I built from nothing. My laptop was already open on the coffee table. I pulled up the Bloomberg article, reading through the final version carefully. It was comprehensive. 5,000 words covering everything from my childhood to my current vision for AI's future. They'd interviewed 12 of my clients, all of whom spoke glowingly about our technology. They'd analyzed our financials, our growth trajectory, our competitive advantages. And they'd asked about my family. I read that section carefully. When asked about her family's reaction to her success, Morrison's face becomes unreadable. They love me, she says carefully. But they didn't understand what I was building. To them, working on a computer meant I was playing games or wasting time. They wanted me to get a traditional job with a regular paycheck. They meant well. Did they support her entrepreneurial journey? A long pause. They supported me the way they knew how. Which wasn't the way I needed. Morrison's brother is a managing director at Goldman Sachs. Her sister is a partner at a major law firm. Yet Morrison, who built a company now valued at $4.2 billion, says she felt like the family failure for years. They measured success by traditional metrics. Prestigious companies, impressive job titles, steady paychecks. My success looked different, so they couldn't see it. Does that bother her? She shakes her head. Not anymore. I built what I built because I believed in it, not because I needed their approval. Would it have been easier with their support? Probably. But it also made me more resilient. When the people who love you don't believe in you, you learn to believe in yourself twice as hard. I approved the article and sent it back. At midnight, it went live on Bloomberg's website. Within an hour, it was the top story on every major tech news site. By 2 a.m. I was trending on Twitter. My phone buzzed with texts from Tyler. Just read the Bloomberg article. I deserve everything you said. I'm sorry. From Rachel, the part about being the family failure broke my heart. We failed you. From Mom, I'm going to read this article every day until I've memorized every word. I never want to forget how badly we let you down. From Dad, you were generous in what you said about us. More generous than we deserved. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the Q4 projections. We were launching 3 major product updates next month. We had expansion plans for South America and Asia. We had a world to change. At 7 a.m. Eastern, 4 a.m. Pacific, the Bloomberg television interview aired. I didn't watch it. I'd lived it. I knew what I'd said. But apparently the rest of the world watched. By 8 a.m. my phone was receiving hundreds of notifications per minute. Friend requests, interview offers, partnership proposals, speaking invitations. And messages from people I'd never met. Your story inspired me to keep working on my startup even though my family thinks I'm crazy. I'm the family failure too. Thank you for showing that success doesn't look like what everyone expects. You proved that believing in yourself matters more than anyone else's belief in you. At 10 a.m. I finally got out of bed and made coffee. My communications director had scheduled a press call for noon. My investors wanted a strategy meeting at 2 p.m. I had a full day of managing the aftermath of going from invisible to unavoidable. My doorbell rang at 10:30 a.m. I opened it to find my entire family standing there. Mom, Dad, Tyler, Rachel, even Mark. We know you're busy, Mom started. We know you probably don't want to see us. But we needed to come here and say this in person. Say what? Tyler stepped forward. That we're sorry. That we were wrong. That we're going to spend the rest of our lives making this right. You don't need to make anything right, I said. Yes, we do, Rachel insisted. We dismissed you. We belittled you. We treated your dreams like jokes and your success like lies. And then we watched you on Bloomberg this morning talking about how you built $1 billion company while feeling like the family failure, and we realized, her voice broke. We realized we did that to you. Dad cleared his throat. The reporter asked you what advice you'd give to other entrepreneurs whose families don't support them. Do you remember what you said? I shook my head. You said, build it anyway. Build it because you believe in it, not because anyone else does. And one day either they'll understand or they won't. But either way, you'll have built something extraordinary. That's good advice, I said. It's heartbreaking advice, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. That's advice you give to strangers, not advice you should have to give yourself. You should have had family who believed in you from the start. But I didn't. And I'm okay with that now. We're not okay with it, Tyler said firmly. We're not okay with the fact that we were the obstacles you had to overcome instead of the support system that helped you build. I looked at them, my family, successful and accomplished in their own rights, standing in my apartment building hallway looking lost and ashamed. Come in, I said, stepping aside. They filed in, taking in my modest apartment with new eyes. You really did build it all from here, Rachel said softly, looking at the living room where my original desk still sat in the corner. This is where it started. Why didn't you move? Dad asked. You can afford anything. This place reminds me of who I was when I started. When all I had was an idea and determination. I never want to forget that. We sat in my small living room, and for the first time in years they asked real questions. Not dismissive questions designed to prove I was failing, but genuine questions about my work, my vision, my journey. I told them about the early days. About the 72-hour coding sessions. About the investors who said no 23 times before one said yes. About the first client who believed in us. About hiring employee number 1, then 10, then 100. They listened without interrupting, without dismissing, without assuming they knew better. I watched your Bloomberg interview 3 times, Tyler said eventually. The host asked you what your biggest challenge was. You said loneliness. That surprised me. Why? Because you have 400 employees. Thousands of clients. You're surrounded by people. None of whom are family, I said quietly. I built all of this while feeling like I was doing it alone. Like no one who mattered really saw what I was accomplishing. Mom's face crumpled. We should have seen it. Yes, I agreed. You should have. But you didn't. And I had to make peace with that. Can we make peace with it? Rachel asked. Can we move forward from here? I don't know, I said honestly. You believe in me now because Bloomberg told you to. Because the whole world is celebrating what I built. But what about the next thing? What if my next venture fails? What if I take risks that don't make sense to you? Will you believe in me then? They exchanged uncertain glances. That's what I thought, I said not unkindly. You believe in my success. I need people who believe in me. Give us a chance, Dad said. Give us a chance to learn how to do that. Maybe, I said. But not today. Today I have a company to run and a media storm to manage. Today I need to focus on what I've built, not on what we've lost. They stood to leave, reluctant but understanding. At the door, Tyler turned back. For what it's worth, I've spent my entire career being the successful Morrison sibling. The one everyone looked up to. And now everyone's looking at me and asking how I didn't see that my sister was more successful than I could ever hope to be. That must be difficult, I said. It's humbling, he corrected. And I needed it. After they left, I stood at my window looking out at Seattle's skyline. Somewhere in one of those buildings my team was working. Building. Creating. Solving problems I'd never have to think about because I'd hired brilliant people to handle them. I'd built something extraordinary. Not because my family believed in me, but because I believed in myself when no one else would. And that, I realized, was the real victory. The Bloomberg feature called me the most influential AI entrepreneur of the decade. My family was just the last to know. The Wellington Foundation Charity Gala was held at the Four Seasons Ballroom, a glittering affair with crystal chandeliers, a string quartet, and 500 of San Francisco's wealthiest elite. Tickets were $10,000 per plate. My brother Marcus had purchased a table for 12 and insisted I attend. I should have known better. I stood near the bar, nursing a glass of sparkling water, acutely aware that my suit, a 3-year-old off-the-rack navy number from Macy's, made me stand out among the sea of custom Italian tailoring. My tie was slightly crooked. My shoes needed polishing. I looked exactly like what everyone assumed I was, out of place. There he is. Marcus's voice boomed across the room. He was walking toward me with a group of executives, his arm already raised to clap me on the shoulder. At 35, Marcus was everything our parents had dreamed of: VP of Operations at TechFront Solutions, a rapidly growing software company. Tall, charismatic, expensively dressed, and absolutely insufferable. "Everyone, this is my little brother David," Marcus announced to his companions. "The family tech guy." I forced a smile. "Nice to meet you all." "What do you do, David?" asked a woman in a diamond necklace that probably cost more than most people's cars. Before I could answer, Marcus jumped in. "He fixes computers in the basement. Tech support stuff. You know, when your printer jams or your email doesn't work, you call guys like David." The group chuckled politely. The woman's smile became slightly pitying. "It's honest work," said one of the men, a balding executive with kind eyes. "Nothing wrong with that." "Absolutely," Marcus agreed, his tone dripping with condescension disguised as support. "We can't all be executives, right? Someone's got to handle the grunt work. David makes, what, $15 an hour?" "Something like that," I said quietly, taking a sip of water. It was easier than explaining. Easier than watching their faces when I tried to tell the truth and Marcus talked over me or changed the subject. I'd given up correcting him 3 years ago, after a particularly brutal Thanksgiving dinner where he'd spent an hour explaining to our extended family why my hobby computer job wasn't a real career. "The problem is," Marcus continued, warming to his favorite topic, "David has no ambition. He could have gone into management, sales, something with advancement potential. But he's comfortable just coasting. Right, Davy?" I hated being called Davy. He knew that. "I'm comfortable with my choices," I said evenly. "See? No drive." Marcus shook his head with exaggerated sadness. "Our parents paid for his computer science degree at Berkeley." "Stanford," I corrected quietly. "Whatever, expensive school. And he's basically doing the same job he could have done with a high school diploma. It kills mom and dad." The executives looked uncomfortable now, sensing family tension. The woman with the diamonds excused herself to find the restroom. The others drifted away with murmured excuses about needing fresh drinks. Marcus either didn't notice or didn't care. He steered me toward his table where his colleagues from TechFront were already seated. "Everyone, this is my brother David. He's in tech support." The way he said it made it sound like I cleaned septic tanks. "Nice to meet you," said a polished woman who introduced herself as Victoria, TechFront's CFO. "David went to some fancy college but never did anything with it," Marcus explained, sitting down and gesturing for me to take the empty chair beside him. "He's been at the same entry-level position for years. No promotions, no raises. Just coasting." "That must be frustrating," Victoria said, looking at me with that same pitying expression I'd seen all night. "I'm satisfied with my work," I said simply. "Satisfied," Marcus laughed. "That's the problem. You should be hungry. Ambitious. Look at Richard here." He gestured to a young man across the table. "He started in our IT department 5 years ago. Now he's a senior systems manager. That's how you build a career." Richard looked embarrassed. "I'm sure David has his reasons for his choices." "Yeah, laziness," Marcus said, and everyone laughed because when the VP makes a joke you laugh. "I keep telling him to apply to TechFront. We're always looking for tech support guys." But he likes his little basement office, fixing printers for minimum wage. I checked my phone discreetly. 3 missed calls from my executive assistant and 7 messages from my legal team. The acquisition must be moving faster than anticipated. Always on that phone, Marcus said, noticing. Let me guess. Someone's computer crashed and they need you to reboot it? More laughter from the table. Something like that, I said. The evening dragged on. Dinner was served, filet mignon and lobster tail that I barely tasted. Marcus held court at the table, telling stories about TechFront's success, dropping names of clients and deals, making sure everyone knew how important he was. And at every opportunity he made sure everyone knew how unimportant I was. David still lives in a studio apartment, he mentioned during the salad course. Can you believe that? At 32? I offered to help him with a down payment on a condo, but he said he was fine renting. I didn't mention that my studio apartment was actually a 3-bedroom penthouse in Pacific Heights that I'd purchased outright 4 years ago. He drives a 12-year-old Honda, Marcus continued during the main course. I keep telling him to upgrade, but he says it runs fine. No sense of style, this one. I didn't mention that the Honda was a vintage NSX I'd restored myself, currently worth about $180,000. Or that I also owned a Tesla and an Audi R8, both parked in my building's private garage. And he's single, Marcus said during dessert, shaking his head sadly. Can't seem to keep a girlfriend. I think women are intimidated by guys with no ambition. I didn't mention that I'd been too busy running a company to prioritize dating, though I'd had several relationships that ended amicably when my work schedule became too demanding. My phone buzzed again. My CO this time with an urgent tag. I excused myself and stepped out to the hallway. Chin, I answered. David, thank God. The Waverly board just accelerated the timeline. They want to finalize the acquisition tonight. All parties are standing by, but we need your signature on the merger documents within the next 2 hours or the deal falls apart. I checked my watch. 10 p.m. Where are the documents? Already sent to your encrypted email. But David, this is a $2.8 billion acquisition. The lawyers want to brief you on the final terms before you sign. And the Waverly CEO wants a video call to confirm everything personally. Set up the call for 11 p.m. I'll review the documents now and be ready. You're at that charity thing with your brother, right? Do you need us to send a car? No, I can handle it from here. Just make sure the legal team is available for questions. I hung up and pulled up the merger documents on my phone. 247 pages of legal terms, financial projections and integration plans. I'd been working on this acquisition for 8 months. Waverly Technologies was a smaller but innovative AI company that would perfectly complement our existing portfolio. There you are. I looked up to find Marcus approaching with several of his TechFront colleagues, including a silver-haired man I recognized from the company website as James Burton, TechFront CEO. David, I want you to meet my boss, Marcus said proudly. James Burton, CEO of TechFront Solutions. James, this is my brother David. The one I told you about. The tech support brother, Burton said, shaking my hand with the firm grip of someone used to business deals. Marcus speaks of you often. I'm sure he does, I said dryly. We're always looking for good IT support staff, Burton continued. If you're ever looking to move up from your current position, we'd be happy to have you interview at TechFront. That's very kind, I said. See. Marcus beamed. I told you networking at these events could help you. James here could get you a job that actually has benefits. Maybe even gets you out of that basement. Burton chuckled. We do have a very nice IT department. Above ground even. Windows and everything. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. I'm sorry, I need to take this, I said. Always working, Marcus sighed to Burton. Even when he's at a social event. Someone's probably having a printer emergency. I stepped away and answered. Sarah, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but the Waverly team just sent over revised terms on the stock options package for their executives. It's within acceptable parameters, but I wanted your approval before legal signs off. Send me the revision. I'll review it in the next 20 minutes. You're still at that gala? Unfortunately. Want me to send security to extract you? We could claim a company emergency. I smiled despite myself. Tempting, but I can handle it. Just get me those documents. I hung up and turned back to find Marcus, Burton, and now several other TechFront executives watching me curiously. Everything okay? Burton asked. Just some work issues, I said. See, James? This is what I mean, Marcus said. David takes his job way too seriously. It's tech support, not brain surgery. But he acts like every computer problem is a 5-alarm fire. Attention to detail is important, Burton said diplomatically. It's tech support, Marcus repeated. The job is literally, have you tried turning it off and on again? David makes it sound like he's running NASA. The group laughed. I checked my watch. I needed to review those documents and get on the video call with Waverly's CEO in 45 minutes. Marcus, I said, I'm going to need to leave soon. Work emergency. You're kidding, Marcus groaned. The silent auction hasn't even started yet. What kind of emergency can tech support possibly have on a Saturday night? The kind that requires my immediate attention. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Marcus said to Burton. No boundaries. They call and he jumps. That's why he's stuck in the same position. Can't say no, can't delegate. Classic entry-level mindset. My phone buzzed with the revised documents from Sarah. I pulled them up and started scanning through the changes while Marcus continued talking about my supposed lack of career development. The numbers looked good. Waverly's executives were asking for slightly better vesting terms on their stock options, but nothing that would impact the overall deal structure. I quickly typed out my approval and sent it back to Sarah. Are you even listening? Marcus asked, irritated. Sorry, I said, pocketing my phone. What were you saying? I was telling James about how you've been at the same company for almost a decade with zero advancement. What's the name of that place you work at again? Some tiny startup. Something like that, I said. Probably one of those companies with like 15 employees total, Marcus explained to Burton. The kind where everyone wears jeans and thinks they're going to be the next Google. No real structure, no advancement opportunities. David's probably employee number 12 or something. Employee number 1 actually, I said quietly. Even worse. Marcus crowed. You've been there since the beginning and you're still in the same position? That's actually sad, David. Burton looked uncomfortable. Sometimes small companies can't offer the same advancement opportunities as larger organizations. Exactly, Marcus agreed. That's why I keep telling David to apply to a real company like TechFront. We have structure, clear career paths, benefits. Not some startup that's going to fold in 5 years. My phone rang again. This time it was the chairman of the board for my own company, a venture capital legend named Robert Chin, no relation despite the same last name, who'd invested early and served as my mentor. I really need to take this, I said, already walking away. See. I heard Marcus say behind me. No work-life balance. That's why he's single. I stepped outside onto the terrace, the cool San Francisco night air a relief after the stuffiness of the ballroom. Robert, I answered. David, the Waverly deal is accelerating. Are you prepared to finalize tonight? Documents are reviewed, revised terms approved. I'm scheduled for a call with their CEO at 11. Good. This is important, David. Waverly's AI technology could position us as the market leader in enterprise automation. But we need your signature tonight or they're considering the competing offer from Dataflow. I understand. I'll handle it. Where are you right now? Charity gala with my brother. Robert laughed. The one who thinks you fix computers in a basement? That's the one. You know, you could just tell him the truth. I've tried. He doesn't listen. It's easier this way. If you say so. Call me after you sign the documents. I hung up and checked my watch. 30 minutes until the call. I needed to find somewhere quiet to conduct the video conference. I went back inside and found Marcus holding court with an even larger group now, including some of the charity's board members. David, he called out. Come here. I was just telling everyone about your job. I walked over reluctantly. This is my brother, Marcus announced. He works in IT support. Makes about $15 an hour fixing computers. We're very proud of him anyway. The group offered polite smiles. One woman, a board member in an elegant Chanel suit, said, everyone's contribution matters no matter the role. Exactly. Marcus agreed. That's what I keep telling David. Just because he's not successful by traditional standards doesn't mean he's not valuable. Right, buddy? Right, I said tonelessly. The problem is he's 32 and still in an entry-level position, Marcus continued. No advancement, no promotions. I keep offering to help with his resume, get him interviews at real companies, but he's stubborn. Some people are just content with simplicity, the Chanel woman said kindly. Not everyone needs to climb the corporate ladder. That's a diplomatic way of saying he has no ambition, Marcus said, laughing. But yeah, David's always been the simple one. I'm the driven brother. He's the other one. My phone showed a new email from the Waverly CEO. Subject line, ready when you are. Marcus, I need to go, I said. Work emergency. Seriously. Marcus looked genuinely annoyed now. What kind of emergency? Did someone's keyboard stop working? Something like that. This is embarrassing, Marcus said to the group. He's going to leave a $10,000 plate charity event because someone needs their password reset. It's a bit more complex than that, I said. Is it though? Marcus challenged. You're in tech support, David. Your entire job can be solved with Google and basic troubleshooting. You're not curing cancer. You're not running a company. You're fixing computers. I felt a flash of irritation but kept my voice calm. Nevertheless, I need to go. Wait, Burton said suddenly. He was looking at his phone with a strange expression. Marcus, what did you say your brother's last name was? Davidson. Why? Burton's face had gone pale. He looked at his phone, then at me, then back at his phone. And he works in tech? Tech support, Marcus corrected. Entry level. Why? James, what's wrong? Burton held up his phone, showing the screen to Marcus. I couldn't see what it displayed, but I watched my brother's face transform from confusion to shock. That can't be right, Marcus said slowly. What? Asked the Chanel woman. Burton cleared his throat. I just received an urgent email from my board of directors. Apparently, TechFront Solutions is being acquired. The group went silent. Acquired. Marcus repeated. By who? Burton's eyes met mine. By Waverly Technologies. Which is itself being acquired by. He paused, checking his phone again. By Quantum Dynamics Corporation. The silence deepened. I don't understand, Marcus said. What does that have to do with? Quantum Dynamics, Burton continued, his voice strange, is apparently one of the largest private enterprise software companies in the country. Revenue last year was $4.7 billion. And according to this email, the CEO and majority shareholder is. He looked up at me. David Chin. You could have heard a pin drop. That's impossible, Marcus said flatly. David works in tech support. He makes $15 an hour. Marcus, I said quietly, I tried to tell you. Tell me what? His voice was rising. That you're secretly a billionaire? That's insane. You drive a beat-up Honda. You live in a studio apartment. I drive a vintage NSX worth about $180,000, I corrected. And I live in a 3-bedroom penthouse in Pacific Heights that I own outright. The Chanel woman gasped softly. Burton was scrolling through his phone rapidly. David Chin, CEO of Quantum Dynamics. Age 32. Stanford Computer Science. Founded the company at 23 with venture capital from Chin Capital Group. He looked up. You founded your company 9 years ago? 9.5, I said. Current valuation according to this merger document. Burton's hand was shaking slightly. $12.3 billion. Marcus's face had gone from red to white. That's not possible. You work in a basement. You told me. I never told you anything, I interrupted. You told everyone I worked in tech support. I tried to correct you the first dozen times. You wouldn't listen. Eventually I stopped trying. But the Stanford thing, you said you went to Berkeley. You said I went to Berkeley. I said Stanford. You didn't hear me. The studio apartment. You assumed. I never said where I lived. Your job. I said I worked in tech at a startup. You decided that meant tech support. Victoria, the CFO, spoke up. Mr. Chin, if this is true, that means. It means, I said, checking my watch, that in approximately 15 minutes, I need to finalize a $2.8 billion acquisition of Waverly Technologies, which will then immediately acquire TechFront Solutions for $1.4 billion as part of a strategic expansion into the enterprise software market. Burton sat down heavily. You're acquiring my company. Technically Waverly is acquiring your company, but yes, I'm acquiring Waverly, which makes TechFront a subsidiary of Quantum Dynamics. Oh my God, Marcus said faintly. I need a quiet room with good internet for a video conference, I continued. Mr. Burton, I apologize for the informal setting, but the timing accelerated unexpectedly. I'd planned to handle this through proper channels on Monday, but Waverly's board wanted to finalize tonight. There's a private conference room on the second floor, the Chanel woman said quickly. She was looking at me with entirely different eyes now. I'm Sandra Wellington. I chair this foundation. I'll have staff set it up for you immediately. Thank you. Wait, Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. Wait. You're saying you're actually the CEO and majority shareholder of a $12 billion software company? Yes, I said. Quantum Dynamics provides enterprise automation solutions to about 60% of Fortune 500 companies. We have offices in 18 countries and employ over 8,000 people. I founded it with a $2 million seed investment when I was 23, took it profitable within 2 years, and have been growing steadily since. The crowd that had gathered was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. The printer jokes, Marcus said weakly. All those jokes about me fixing printers and resetting passwords? I finished. Yes, those were memorable. But why didn't you correct me? I tried, Marcus. For years I tried. But you were so convinced of your narrative, the successful older brother and the failure younger brother, that you couldn't hear anything that contradicted it. Burton was recovering his composure. Mr. Chin, I apologize for any disrespect shown this evening. If I'd known, you'd have treated me differently, I finished. I know. That's why I didn't correct the assumption. I wanted to see how people treated someone they thought was beneath them. That's not fair, Marcus protested. I'm your brother. I was trying to help you. You were trying to feel superior to me, I corrected gently. There's a difference. Sandra Wellington appeared with a staff member. Mr. Chin, the conference room is ready. We have excellent Wi-Fi and complete privacy. Thank you. I turned to Burton. Mr. Burton, after I complete the Waverly acquisition, you'll receive formal notification of TechFront's acquisition through your board of directors. I've reviewed your company's operations extensively, and I have no plans for major restructuring. You've built a solid organization. Thank you, he said, still looking shell-shocked. However, I continued, glancing at Marcus, I will be implementing a company-wide review of management practices, particularly around treatment of junior staff and corporate culture. I've found that companies with respectful, supportive cultures tend to outperform those where senior leadership treats subordinates with contempt. Marcus's face went from white to red. I'll want a full report on TechFront's internal culture within 60 days of acquisition, I told Burton. Exit interviews, satisfaction surveys, documentation of any complaints. I'm particularly interested in how VPs treat their direct reports and whether there are any patterns of condescension or bullying. Of course, Burton said quickly. We take workplace culture very seriously. Good. I'll look forward to reviewing that data. I checked my watch. Now if you'll excuse me, I have an acquisition to finalize. I followed Sandra Wellington to the conference room, acutely aware of the stunned silence I'd left behind. The video conference with Waverly's CEO took 45 minutes. Terms were confirmed, documents were signed electronically, and by 11:47 p.m., Quantum Dynamics had officially acquired Waverly Technologies for $2.8 billion in a combination of cash and stock. At 11:51 p.m., Waverly's board authorized the immediate acquisition of TechFront Solutions for $1.4 billion. By midnight, my company had grown by 2 subsidiaries and nearly 3,000 employees. I thanked Waverly's CEO, congratulated their team, and ended the call. Then I sat in the silent conference room for a moment, processing what had just happened. Not the acquisition, I'd been planning that for months. But the confrontation with Marcus. The look on his face. The realization that his entire narrative about me had been wrong. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad. My phone buzzed. Robertson. Congratulations, David. How does it feel to be a tech mogul with a $15 billion empire? Exhausting, I admitted. Your brothers still think you fix printers? Not anymore. Good. Maybe now he'll show you some respect. Maybe, I said. Or maybe he'll just resent me for making him look foolish. Not your problem. He tried to tell him. He wouldn't listen. I know. But he's still my brother. Then be the bigger person. But don't let him diminish you anymore. I won't. I hung up and headed back to the ballroom. The gala was winding down, guests starting to filter out. I found Marcus sitting alone at his table, his colleagues having dispersed. He looked up when I approached. His face was a complicated mix of emotions. Shame, anger, confusion, hurt. Why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. I sat down across from him. I tried, Marcus. So many times. But you let me believe. I let you believe what you wanted to believe, I corrected. Every time I tried to explain my actual job, you talked over me or changed the subject. Eventually, it was easier to just let you think whatever you wanted. I thought I was helping you, he said, and he sounded genuinely bewildered. All those job offers, the resume help, the networking opportunities. I thought you needed my help. I didn't need help, Marcus. I needed respect. I needed you to listen when I talked about my work instead of dismissing it. I needed you to believe in me instead of assuming I was a failure. He was quiet for a long moment. I was jealous, he finally admitted. What? Have you? Even when I thought you were in tech support, I was jealous. Because you seemed content, happy. I'm a VP at a successful company and I'm miserable half the time. The pressure, the politics, the constant need to prove myself. And you seemed genuinely satisfied with your life. I hadn't expected that. Marcus. And now I find out you're not just successful, you're phenomenally successful. You're literally buying my company. And you did it all without bragging, without needing everyone to know how important you are. You just did it. It's not a competition, I said quietly. It's always been a competition, he countered. At least for me. Mom and Dad always compared us. Who got better grades, better jobs, better everything. I thought I was winning. There's no winning, Marcus. We're brothers, not opponents. He laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. You're the one who built a $12 billion company. And you're a VP at 35 at a successful software company, I pointed out. That's impressive, Marcus. That's genuinely impressive. Not compared to. Stop comparing, I interrupted. That's the whole problem. You spent so much time comparing yourself to me, or to what you thought I was, that you couldn't see what was actually happening. He rubbed his face with both hands. What happens now? With TechFront? With my job? Nothing, I said. Burton runs a good company. I meant what I said about no major restructuring. You keep your job, your title, your responsibilities. You're not going to fire me for being an asshole? You're my brother, Marcus. I'm not going to fire you. But I am going to ask you to think about how you treat people. All people. Not just the ones you think are important. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, David. For all of it. The jokes, the condescension, I know, I said. And I accept your apology. But things need to change between us. They will, he promised. I'll do better. Good. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, a vintage NSX, huh? I smiled. Want to see it? Really? Come on. It's parked in the private garage. We walked out together past the remaining gala guests who now looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Sandra Wellington caught my eye and gave me a small nod. Burton raised his glass in a silent toast. In the garage, Marcus whistled when he saw the NSX. This is beautiful. Thanks. Restored it myself. Of course you did. He shook his head. A penthouse in Pacific Heights? 3 bedrooms. Great view of the bay. Jesus. And I offered to help you with a down payment on a condo. You were trying to be kind, I said. In your own way. I was being an asshole. That too. We both laughed and some of the tension eased. David. Yeah. Can we start over? Like actually start over? No assumptions, no competitions, just brothers. I held out my hand. I'd like that. He shook it, then pulled me into a hug. I really am proud of you. I should have said that years ago. Thanks, Marcus. And I'm sorry for all those printer jokes. They were pretty funny, I admitted. They were terrible. Yeah, I agreed. They really were. 3 months later, I stood at the front of TechFront's main conference room, addressing the combined leadership teams of TechFront, Waverly, and Quantum Dynamics. We were finalizing the integration plans and establishing the new organizational structure. Marcus sat in the third row listening intently. After the presentation he approached with Burton. "David, excellent presentation," Burton said. "The integration timeline is ambitious but achievable." "Thanks, James. I have confidence in all three teams." After Burton left, Marcus lingered. "Hey, Mom and Dad want to have dinner this weekend. They want to hear about the acquisition. And they want to apologize." "Apologize for what?" "For believing my version of your life instead of asking you directly." I smiled. "Tell them I'd love to have dinner." "Great. When, David?" "I've been thinking about what you said. About how I treat people. I started doing skip-level meetings with my team, talking directly to junior staff without their managers present. Getting their perspective on things." "How's that going?" "Eye-opening," he admitted. "Turns out I've been kind of a dick to a lot of people. The first step is awareness. I'm working on it. One day at a time. That's all any of us can do." My phone buzzed. Sarah, my CFO, letting me know we just closed another acquisition. A smaller AI startup that would complement Waverly's technology. "Another company?" Marcus asked, seeing my expression. "A small one. 20 million. He shook his head in amazement. "You know what the craziest part is? You're still the same David. Same calm, same focused, same guy who used to help me fix my computer in college. You just happen to run a tech empire." "The job doesn't change who you are," I said. "It just reveals it." "That's surprisingly wise." "I have my moments." We walked out of the conference room together, talking about Mom's cooking and Dad's new golf obsession and whether the 49ers would make the playoffs. Normal brother stuff. Because that's what we were, underneath all the job titles and company valuations and acquisition deals. Just two brothers trying to figure out life one day at a time. And maybe, finally, actually listening to each other along the way.